Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, yesterday, the British Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, laid out very clearly to the House of Commons that there would be serious consequences if it turned out that the death of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi had been carried out at the behest of the administration. Let's just remind ourselves of what Jeremy Hunt promised.
The actions Britain and our allies take will depend on two things. Firstly, the credibility of the final explanation given by Saudi Arabia. And secondly, on our confidence that such an appalling episode cannot and will not be repeated. Honourable members know that we have an important strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia involving defence and security cooperation, which has saved lives on the streets of Britain. We also have a trading partnership that supports thousands of jobs. But whilst we will therefore be thoughtful and considered in our response, I have also been clear that if the appalling stories we are reading turn out to be true, they are fundamentally incompatible with our values, and we will act accordingly.
OK, we will act accordingly if it turns out to be true. Well, long awaited, Turkish President Erdogan today addressed his own MPs from his ruling party earlier, pretty much confirming that beyond doubt, as far as they are concerned, this was a premeditated assassination.
The fact that he's been murdered at the consulate, Saudi Arabia consulate in Istanbul, has been proven. It is clear that a planning activity has taken place. Some people have been informed about his visit. The staff at the consulate left and went to their country in a hurry, which indicates that they've been involved in preparations.
A premeditated murder. That is what Turkish President Erdogan told the world today. Now, Jeremy Hunt did talk about the important strategic partnership, but one of the areas that I think we shouldn't ignore is what is going on in the war in Yemen. And a couple of days ago, I spoke to Lord Andrew Green, former British ambassador to Saudi Arabia, and I asked him very directly whether British munitions were being used in that war.
Yes, it would. I think our government would say that we have advisors there who try to ensure that they use them in a careful manner, but large bombs in a careful manner are nonetheless a contribution to the casualties. There's more sides than one to this, to be fair, because the Houthi rebels in Yemen are from time to time firing missiles at Saudi airports. So if someone was firing a missile at Heathrow, we might have something to say about it. So it's not simple, but what I really object to is the way in which the Yemeni people are simply being starved, and that can't be allowed to continue.
Well, for a former ambassador, they were pretty blunt words. I'm sure you will agree with me. So maybe what the confirmed now murder of Jamal Khashoggi does is it makes us perhaps think a little bit more deeply about our relationship with Saudi Arabia and what that weaponry is being used for. So I want to ask you, now that Turkey's president has confirmed that it was murder, how should the UK act? Are you one of those who thinks perhaps we should simply sever all ties, even if economically it hurts us? If that's how you feel, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think we still need some more answers because these people may have been acting as rogue agents, in which case text to 84850. And are you worried about the UK's involvement in the arms trade? Let me know either way, because a lot of jobs are at stake here too. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Watch us on Facebook. I'm live here in Strasbourg, where we await tomorrow morning Mr Juncker and Mr Tusk responding to that pretty much non-summit with Theresa May last week. Now, my view on this is we will do very, very little. I was very struck yesterday, Boris Johnson's big weekly article. He big headline, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi was a barbaric act we mustn't let Saudi Arabia off the hook. Wow, I thought, I best read this. What is Boris recommending that we do? And at the end he says, we must put maximum pressure on Saudi Arabia to do its part to end the war in Yemen. Yeah, thanks, Boris. So basically, there's the ex-Foreign Secretary saying we should just sort of put a bit of pressure on. We have the current Foreign Secretary saying we should act accordingly. I don't think the British government is going to do anything. Why? I think it's too important to us. Remember, back in March this year, Mohammed bin Salman came to London. There was a summit. And what was talked about was $90 billion worth of investment and trade between our two countries over the course of the next 10 years. That's nearly $10 billion every single year. That is many, many thousands of jobs. Folks, I'm not defending this position. I'm not saying it's the right position. I'm explaining this position. And there is quite a contrast, isn't there, to Russia, who do terrible things, and one of them on our soil in Salisbury, and we act very quickly. Why? Because we do not have the same level of financial interest with Russia. This is the way the world works. Please tell me I'm wrong. Andrew is calling from Warwick and is my first caller on this subject. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening. I don't think it actually matters, to be honest. I think that, if you notice that Britain, Germany and France put out a combined statement, we didn't put out one on our own. And this is entirely congruent with the fact. It was entirely congruent with the fact that since we voted to leave, since we voted Brexit, although we have been going along saying we're going to move on with trade and everything else, the government has been signing and certainly in Chequers making very, very positive noises towards a combined foreign policy and subjugating our military under their rules. So it's not so much a case of what do we think of when we see our MPs standing, clutching their lapels, uttering disapproving utterances in Parliament. What we should be more concerned about is whether or not we can actually make our own foreign policy at all. It doesn't matter what we think; it matters what the EU think.
You raise a very, very important point, because both of the comments that we've made publicly since the disappearance of Khashoggi have happened, as you say, in conjunction with France and with Germany. I rather think we've almost given up on the concept of foreign policy and accepted ever since William Hague's time that we do this now on a European level. I think you're right when it comes to military relationships. Well, I don't want to get too deep into that now, but even though we're withdrawing from the European Union, it seems that the formation of a European army has our full support. Andrew, would you advocate that with Brexit we genuinely go back to having an independent foreign policy and say what we think?
I think it's a terrifying concept if we don't. Veterans for Britain have published a takedown of Chequers in terms of what Mrs May has been offering for the defence side of things, and it's frankly terrifying. I'd be most grateful if at some point you'd be able to address this on one of the shows.
Well, do you know, Andrew, I do think at the right moment we will have a debate here about the British Armed Forces and to what extent they're independent or they're not, either with their relationship with NATO or with this emerging European force. But your point about foreign policy, that we've lost our voice completely and therefore we will do absolutely nothing unless it's in conjunction with France and Germany, is a point very well made. Wayne on Facebook says we should cut all ties. We can sell our weapons elsewhere and buy oil from someone else. Wayne, we can buy our oil from somewhere else, but just supposing we entered into a real trade war with Saudi Arabia, us and the Americans. You may not be old enough, Wayne, but some listening will remember 1973, albeit OPEC was more powerful then than it is now. But what they did is they cut the supply of oil to the West. It was done very much as a punishment for our supposed support of Israel in the Yom Kippur War. The price of oil in 1973 quadrupled, leaving to economic disaster in the West. And Trump has made this point that actually, if we get into sanctions with Saudi Arabia, perhaps they could hurt us more than we could hurt them. And that's not just about aerospace. It's not just about munitions. Actually, what could they do to us with the oil price? It is, I think, worth considering. Horatio says Mrs May will do absolutely nothing. Imagine if Russia had done it. It would be done and dusted. Well, if Russia had done it, the whole of the West, of course, would have acted together as they did. Remember, in the wake of Salisbury, across the West, 160 Russian diplomats were expelled, 60 from America alone. I'm going to Colchester to speak to Chris. Good evening, Chris.
Hi, Nigel. All right?
I am. So what should we do, Chris?
Well, it annoys me that people only start caring when a journalist for the Washington Post is being killed. I think this point might have already been raised, but when Saudi bombed, they've been carpet bombing Yemen, but they blew up a school bus and killed a few dozen children a couple of months ago. So surely that would be more of a crime and something we should stop. Especially when it could have been with our weapons and the US weapons and planes. So we can't go around the world virtue signaling about human rights and how much we care when we're involved in something like that. So I just want to see some consistency with our foreign policy. And Saudi Arabia, Philip Hammond, I'm not sure what he's talking about, that Saudi Arabia have helped us make us safer when, they fund mosques spreading Wahhabism and, and they fund ISIS and Al-Qaeda and they're involved in proxy wars that we're involved in. It's complicated, but I definitely think, we should stop selling weapons to regimes like that.
Okay. Chris, you make the point, you make it well. Theo agrees. He says, by message, the response should be harsh and decisive. No more arms deals with Saudi Arabia, simple as that. Theo, Chris, let me say this to both of you guys. Fine, but, they could buy the weapons from somewhere else. The fact that we don't sell them, I'm sure they could still access them. Andrew says the UK's response should be in the form of some economic action. I suspect that it's not going to happen. The Tories are too gutless. Well, Andrew, I might agree with you that they are a bit gutless, but I think the first caller made the point. Actually, in terms of foreign policy, the United Kingdom no longer does its own thing. We do things on a European level, and I've not heard in the last 48 hours that I've been inside this institution any great sense of urgency to do anything about Saudi Arabia. Yep, sure, it's been debated, it's been talked about, but nobody's actually agreed as to what should be done. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
The Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt joined his G7 nation counterparts in condemning the killing of the dissident Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the strongest possible terms. It's been confirmed the Prime Minister will face her Conservative backbenchers in Parliament tomorrow as she tries to persuade them her Brexit plans are on track. The parents of a girl who died after a severe allergic reaction to a pret-a-manger baguette say stricter food labelling laws could be in place as early as next summer following their meeting with the Environment Secretary. LBC weather, dry and clear tonight for southern and eastern parts. Cloudier though, with rain further north, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler. On the trains, a reduced services running on South Western Railway because of strike action, with no service running to or from Hampton Court or between Teddington and Shepperton. On the tubes, there are severe delays on the Central Line westbound between North Acton and West Ruislip, and on the roads in Kingston, it's stop-start on Horse Fair westbound approaching Vicarage Road because of an investigation, causing queues back through Hampton Wick, and it's stop-start on Seven Sisters Road in both directions near Finsbury Park because of temporary lights. Very slow on the A12 northbound approaching the Bow interchange because of an accident.
This is LBC.
Have you ever told a little white lie when your doctor asks how much you drink? It's easy to kid ourselves about our drinking, but the truth is, drinking alcohol most nights can be harmful to your health. Did you know alcohol can raise your blood pressure, which increases the risk of a heart attack, and the more you drink, the greater the risk? Drinking less by having more drink-free days is an easy way to reduce this risk. Remember, there's only one you, so be more drink-aware. See how at drinkfreedays.co.uk.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious? Adventurous? Somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
So tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Olivia. I'm a hermit crab, passionate about dance, and I'm a proud mum to 49 darling hermit crabs.
Wow, you must need a lot of room for the kids, not the dancing.
Oh, we've got a 4-bedroom house with an extension and garden.
Oh, where did you find it?
Zoopla. Me and the hubby used the running costs tool to see if we could afford the rent, energy bills and council tax.
Clever.
We've even got an idea of the water bills. Great for us crabs. Oh, is this live? Can I show you some of my dance moves?
Yeah, it's radio. No one's going to see you.
Oh.
Find and move with Zoopla. Smarter about property.
There's a great range of sofas at Oak Furnitureland. Yep, that's right. Sofas at Oak Furnitureland. Whatever style you want. Fabric, leather, recliner or corner. There's solid hardwood used in the frame and 7-day fast delivery on most sofas. So get an amazing new look for your home this Christmas at prices you just won't expect. So shop now at Oak Furnitureland. There's a store near you. Great sofas, great prices. No compromise.
Are you immunosuppressed? Or do you have a chronic neurological disease such as multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, motor neurone, or Parkinson's disease? Flu on top of health conditions like these can easily develop into something very serious and land you in hospital. That's why the flu jab is free for you. You need it. So don't put it off. Contact your GP or pharmacist to get your free flu jab now. NHS, we're all here to help you stay well this winter.
Introducing the EDF Energy Smart Home Store. Ah, the joys of modern living. Smart lights. Turn them up or down, pink or purple using only your phone. Smart thermostats. Cozy up the house on the way home. Smart plugs. Check the irons off wherever you are. And Alexa with the Amazon Echo. Take your first step towards a smarter home. With EDF Energy's helpful advice and exclusive deals, it couldn't be easier. Smart devices at smart prices. Search EDF Energy Smart Home Store.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Turkish President Erdogan tells us conclusively today that it was a premeditated murder that saw the death of Jamal Khashoggi. And I'm asking, given that Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt said yesterday if this was proven that the UK would act accordingly, what we should do. And some very strong passions out there. Paul says, Nigel, we should increase our generation of renewable energy so we no longer need Saudi oil. What about shale gas, Paul? Isn't it interesting? There's been this massive campaign against shale gas. And I know up in the northwest of England it's been very convincing. I don't know who's paid for that campaign. I do wonder whether it might be some of the oil producers around the world. But I'd love to see us less reliant on the Middle East for oil. Absolutely. Kathy says we should boycott Saudi Arabia. We don't need contacts with monsters like them. I'm going to go to Donald in Kensington as a new caller to this show. Good evening, Donald.
So, hi. I just want to say that it was a terrible thing about the killing of Mr. Khashoggi. However, I also like to say that there has been no definitive proof that there is a direct connection to the Crown Prince, and it's other than people losing their heads and doing the wrong thing who were sent out to see Mr. Khashoggi. Therefore, I think that the United States, and I hope also Britain, don't seek to take any action at this time as matters become more clear. Mr. Khashoggi, after all, had become an Islamist and in favor of terror groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood, which incidentally also Mr. Erdogan is also a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood and the various terrorist groups there in the Middle East. So as a result, I think it would be in our best interest to step back, to realize that Mr. Khashoggi had his faults, and to take no action against Saudi at this stage, and certainly not try to depose the Crown Prince, which Mr. Erdogan is attempting to do here.
Well, I have to say, Donald, I do think that Erdogan would like to see the Crown Prince removed and somebody else put in his place. So I do agree with that particular point of view. But as an American, there's another chap called Donald who's an American who, of course, is in a very difficult position over this, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But I think that by stepping back, he will be able to allay the more hawkish, and I don't see... America now has a very strong left-wing press. The Washington Post, for which Mr. Khashoggi wrote, in fact, has changed from the Grahams to being a serious left-wing but fairly fair newspaper, to Mr. Bezos as a platform to those who want Arab Springs
Jeff Bezos
and
owns it.
other sort of terrorist groups, and has gone far to the left, and also as a megaphone for some of the Islamist things going on in the Middle East. So
let me just put one idea, Donald. Donald, let me just put one idea to you, though. I mean, you said we should step back and wait for conclusive proof, and I understand that argument, despite what the President of Turkey has said today. But Sir Nicholas Soames, who has described himself as being a friend of the Saudis for nearly 40 years, and this is a former armed forces minister, so big connections there, and, in fact, even going back to his grandfather, Winston Churchill. But he said yesterday that there can be no doubt that the order for this terrible crime came from the very top. So there are even people, Donald, out there who are friends of the Saudis who do think this order came from the Crown Prince himself, and others who suggest that the men involved were known to be part of his team.
That may be the case, but they also seem to have gone rogue, if you'd like to use that word. Mr. Soames may be looking to a different group in Saudi, to the more conservative groups in Saudi, who are also opposed, I would think, to some of the slight reforms that are being attempted by the Crown Prince, who is a young man who will make mistakes. This, I don't think, is one of his mistakes, other than the people he entrusted with this went rogue.
Okay, no, Donald, you've made the argument very well, and Donald from Kensington, new caller of the show, making the point that actually we should still hold our horses. That Jamal Khashoggi was murdered inside that embassy. That's beyond doubt. But could these people have acted in a rogue manner? Dee says, so many people have been killed by the Saudis for so long, and we have done nothing. What's different now? What's different, Dee, is that the death of this journalist, I think, has made us think about the Yemen, what is going on there. And I thought the words of Lord Andrew Green, the former British ambassador in Saudi Arabia, were very strong and very passionate. It isn't just our bombs they're using, they're also at the same time basically trying to starve the other side out. Ali is calling from Hounslow. Good evening to you.
Hi there, Nigel. Good speaking to you again.
Good to have you back on. So what should Jeremy Hunt do?
Well, I'm in the same conclusion with your previous first-time caller, Donald, that Britain has to maintain good relations with Saudi Arabia due to the fact that Saudi Arabia has capital, and also there's a young reformer, young leader, pragmatic leader who's really transforming his nation, and not only just his nation. Not only just
Ali, is he really? Come on, is he really a reformer? He's been selling himself as a liberal reformer.
I was born in Saudi Arabia, and this is the first time that the inheritance of the kingdom, the throne of the House of Saud, had skipped the generation, and he's representing the younger generation, our generation. And just look at his cultural reforms. He's opening up his nation, and this is not just going to have an impact on Saudi Arabia, but the wider Arab world, and as well as the Islamic world. He's the only first Saudi sitting crown prince that is challenging the Wahhabi clerical establishment, and he is reforming. This is a reformation that we're experiencing in the wider Islamic world. And also, I need to put my point across about Yemen. Now, what he's doing in Yemen, remember, it's a coalition of Muslim nations who are fighting Iran-backed Houthi militias who overthrown a legitimate democratic nation, government in Yemen, and also he's maintaining the strategic passageway that is so vital to European and Britain trade. Remember, 95% of all our goods goes through the passage route of Bab al-Mandeb, Red Sea, that connects to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, you just talked about the oil embargo of 1973. Just imagine, and this is clearly stated with the Iranian establishment, that they want to block and control the passageway of Bab al-Mandeb. Now, it's up to Britain and Europe. If they decide to cease any relations with Saudi Arabia, then I think that Saudi Arabia should withdraw from Yemen and let the responsibility be with European nations as well as America. But I must emphasize too, 20,000 ships goes past, whether it be container ships, oil tankers. Imagine if Iranian, through their Houthi lackeys, as well as is proven there's Hezbollah militias in Yemen, captures that passageway. And Iran clearly stated, the clerical establishment clearly stated that they want to block that passageway. Now,
Ali, you've made a very passionate case. A very passionate case for the young Crown Prince and the argument that he's a reformer. I know women can drive in Riyadh now and things like that. I was a bit sceptical. But let me just ask you one last quick question, if I may. What do you think we should do if it was proven that the Crown Prince had given the order to carry out the killing?
Well, again, Britain should maintain their diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Again, all great reformers have to have a strong arm in reforming. Imagine if Britain and America ceased relations with Deng Xiaoping in 1989 in Tiananmen Square. Just imagine that.
I think that part of your argument people are going to find hard to swallow. But Ali, you've made a very, as a Saudi-born person, passionate case, and it was extremely interesting. Terry says, I know your long-held views on Saudi Arabia, and I have been a critic of Saudi Arabia openly and publicly for many years. I thought it was extraordinary. You know, the crisis erupts in 2015-16 in Syria. The Saudis refused to take a single refugee or migrant, but say they're quite happy to fund 200 mosques in Germany. I found that attitude quite extraordinary. I've also been worried, that they have in fact been funding the extreme forms of Islam that have led to so many problems in Europe and the West. So Terry, acknowledges that he knows my views. He says, what concerns me, though, is because of this dreadful murder, what if we in the US pull out of selling arms to Saudis? The likes of Russia will just step in. Terry, it's an argument that many, many people make. Rachel says, Nigel, are our morals for sale? The corrupt will always sell out. The honourable will hold out for the greater good. And Leonard makes the point that the Saudis' ideology is not very healthy for this country. Their money causes a lot of problems on many levels. And Leonard, I can't disagree with that. I think there are some real problems here. Look, as I say, I've been a long-term critic of Saudi Arabia. I don't like the way they act. I don't like the way they behave. But then again, you could say, well, would you take the side of the Iranians? And the answer is no there too. I think the way we have over the last sort of 15 years with successive wars and our involvement, the way we've tried to pick goodies and baddies in the Middle East is a policy that is probably always doomed to failure. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
The Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt has joined other G7 ministers in condemning the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the strongest possible terms. They've released a statement following the death at the Gulf Kingdom's consulate in Istanbul. 2 people have been injured following a gas cylinder explosion at a factory in Glasgow. Emergency services were called to the EMR scrapyard in South Street near the River Clyde at around 3:30 this afternoon. The Prime Minister is going to face her Conservative backbenchers tomorrow as she tries to persuade them her Brexit plans are on track. It's been confirmed Theresa May will attend a meeting of the influential 1922 committee in Parliament following weekend reports of plots to remove her from office. LBC weather. Dry and clear tonight for southern and eastern England and Wales. Cloudier with rain further north, a low of 9 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Metropolitan police officers should, I believe, carry spit hoods or spit guards. Simon Woolley.
Disproportionality is a race penalty.
If they don't spit, they won't need to wear a hood.
If they do spit, then I think you have to assess the situation.
No. What's to assess? Mr. Woolley, you're a police officer and someone is spitting at you.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7, LBC.
October is Stoptober, the month that's all about helping you to quit smoking. If you're feeling stressed, try to make time for fun and relaxation. And remember, you're not alone. You can connect with others on the same journey by joining the Stoptober Facebook community. Quitting smoking is easier with the right support. Find the right support for you with Stoptober's free online personal quit plan. To start your journey, go to lbc.co.uk.
I'm from a small town in Lancashire, and growing up, I just always wanted to move away, so school made me feel a bit trapped. But then my geography teacher took us rambling, So I'm there, walking through nature, and he begins explaining our home to us, why it's special and why we're lucky. He showed me the trails my grandfather took, and also his grandfather before him. That teacher taught geography, but really, he was teaching me who I was.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious? Adventurous? Somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
There's a great range of sofas at Oak Furnitureland. Yep, that's right. Sofas at Oak Furnitureland. Whatever style you want. Fabric, leather, recliner or corner. There's solid hardwood used in the frame and 7-day fast delivery on most sofas. So get an amazing new look for your home this Christmas at prices you just won't expect. So shop now at Oak Furnitureland. There's a store near you. Great sofas, great prices. No compromise.
So tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Olivia. I'm a hermit crab, passionate about dance, and I'm a proud mum to 49 darling hermit crabs.
Wow, you must need a lot of room for the kids, not the dancing.
Oh, we've got a 4-bedroom house with an extension and garden.
Oh, where did you find it?
Zoopla. Me and the hubby used the running costs tool to see if we could afford the rent, energy bills and council tax.
Clever.
We've even got an idea of the water bills. Great for us crabs. Oh, is this live? Can I show you some of my dance moves?
Yeah, it's radio. No one's going to see you.
Oh.
Find and move with Zoopla. Smarter about property.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kings and queens, welcome to your Virgin Atlantic flight. The seatbelt sign is off and the show has started. It's always sunny above the clouds. We're in a different world. We're tickling the stratosphere. We're flying at 30,000 feet. I'll be your host, and if you need anything, bing bong me. Now please, sit back and relax, or sit forward and make an origami penguin. It's up to you. Get ready to depart the everyday. Why? Because you're flying with Virgin Atlantic.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
What should the UK government do about the murder, the pre-planned assassination of Jamal Khashoggi? Before I get back to that, Irene asks me, Nigel, I know you're not discussing this tonight, but what are your thoughts on Italy's budget and what the EU have said today? Does this help our Brexit cause? Well, Irene, let's explain to people what's happened. The new Italian government, the coalition, as you know, between the Lega and the Five Star, who are commanding great support in Italy at the moment, have put together their first budget as a government. They have a planned deficit for this year of 2.4%, which, by the way, is very much lower than ours has been for many, many years. You could argue they have a slightly optimistic projection for growth. By no means is this an outrageous, irresponsible budget put together by a populist government, but they do overall have a real problem with national debt running at 130% of GDP. Only Greece has a higher debt within the European Union. And what's happened is the European Commission, 2 European commissioners, Mr. Moscovici and Dombrovskis, and they are unelected, but they're European commissioners, and they have rejected the budget of the elected Italian government. They've told them, you've got 3 weeks to comply or else. Now, or else what, I don't know. I think what they might do is fine them another 0.5% of their GDP. But if they're saying they're over-borrowed, how would fining them actually help? This is going to be a real battle. You know, national democracy versus European bureaucracy. I think the Italian government will try to hold firm. However, their weakness could be the Italian banking system and what happens in the bond market. So we'll follow this one over the course of the next 3 weeks. Now, tomorrow morning, we'll have Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk responding to what is happening with Brexit, how things went at the summit last week. Today's been a day of intense activity, diplomatic activity here inside the European Parliament. The British ambassador to the European Union, Sir Tim Barrow's been around. And DEXU are here, the Department for Exiting the European Union. Lots of their civil servants are here. I've seen them in the coffee room and around the building. They're having meeting after meeting after meeting, pursuing their job of us exiting the European Union. The one person that none of them have said a single word to is me. because I have a feeling that my view of exiting the European Union is not the one being pursued by the civil service or Mrs May's government. Tells us, I think, really quite a lot. Shane says, Saudi Arabia's killing of one man is terrible, but what's happening in Yemen is worse, because the world does nothing as millions starve. And Shane, that's what we heard, wasn't it? The passion from Lord Andrew Green earlier. Come on. What should the British government do? We've had a couple of callers telling us we should be cautious, that actually, this is a country with a completely different culture to ours, and that Mohammed bin Salman actually is genuinely trying to liberalise the country. Have to say, I'm not so sure. Paul is a new caller from Liverpool. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Nigel. It's a real pleasure to talk to you, mate.
Good to have you on. So, come on, you're Jeremy Hunt. You're in the hot seat, Paul. What do you do?
Right, unfortunately, Nigel, Saudi Arabia have done a despicable act, no doubt about that. Russia did a despicable act. Difference, Russia, it was on our soil. That's the difference. That is a big difference, as far as I'm concerned. All the high morals and all the stances and all that everyone puts on does not put food on the table. We will lose jobs if we take Saudi Arabia on, just as though President Trump knows quite well that if he maintains sanctions and puts in sanctions on Saudi Arabia, 600,000 American jobs will be lost. Now, this is totally against his manifesto. Trump is all about jobs, keeping jobs, make more jobs, not lose 600,000 jobs. High morals and stances do not put food on the table. Now, Yemen... Okay, no, Nigel.
No, Paul. It's very what you say is absolutely logical. There are many who take a different moral stance, but what you say economically is logical. What about Yemen, Paul?
Yemen, okay. All our military hardware is getting used in Yemen. The thing about it is, if Saudi Arabia didn't get the military hardware from the United Kingdom, to just go somewhere else, China. Or somewhere else and go and get it. So exactly the same thing. The fact that we sell arms to Saudi Arabia doesn't mean that anything will change in Yemen. It'll be exactly the same. We'll just go out somewhere else. And then thousands of our aerospace and military hardware suppliers, families, will be on the breadline because they're all going to be out of a job. You've got to put this country first. This country is in enough trouble as it is. We don't want any further trouble with Saudi Arabia.
All right, Paul, you've made the case very well, thank you. And, I don't know whether Paul works in that industry, but I'm sure if we spoke to families involved in the aerospace industry, they would plead with us. However bad Saudi Arabia are, they would get the stuff from somewhere else. Moodin is calling from Manchester, another new caller. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Master Nigel. Long-time listener, but I have never taken your program. I've never taken part in your program.
Well, I tell you what, you have now. You have now. So tell us, what should the British response be?
I think that what Saudis did is really despicable act, as everybody said, and I believe that UK government can do a lot to make sure that Saudis who are responsible for this heinous act to be brought to justice. So a lot of people were bragging about losing jobs, and because of maybe UK or US would of course lose that contract they have got with the prince. But I believe that from what I know about Saudi Arabia, they won't dare cutting those contracts to short. Because now the pickle is on their side, they are in a deep shit, and they will do everything they can.
Thank you. Mind the language.
Oh, sorry. That is really why I believe that they will do everything they can to normalise the situation, and of course, and take the fall for whatever they did. But a lot of people are feeling a bit really not confident with what they have got. I believe that Western governments have got more power to bring Saudi to justice, especially this new prince. He was thought to be.
Do you know what I'd like to see? Yeah, well, he's supposed to be a reform. Do you know, I mean, Trump, for all of his hedging around on this and explaining American jobs, at least he sent his Secretary of State to Saudi Arabia. What have we done? You know, our Foreign Secretary gives a statement in the House of Commons, only says anything publicly on the world stage in conjunction with the French and the Germans. I mean, if this relationship matters that much to us, and clearly it does, whatever happens here, wouldn't it be a good thing if Jeremy Hunt flew out to Riyadh tomorrow?
Of course, that would be a great thing, but from what I have been seeing, UK has been really, over the last few years, has been really going a bit less on the world stage, and it's like they kind of agree in everything that the United States says, which is not really nice, because UK has got really great power, and they can exercise that one and use it to the own benefit, and as well as to the people who have been demonized, especially those people living in the Middle East. Now, a lot of people are expecting a change to happen in the Middle East, unless I believe what's going on with this Saudi house, the Kingdom House, is not sorted. I believe that no tourism will be concluded, and of course the situation will flare up as we go along to the future. So
let's see. I mean, Mooded, in time, we will find out, will we not, whether MBS is genuinely a reformer or not. I'm a bit sceptical. Thank you for taking part in the show. I am off to the West Coast, to California, to Palms Green, to speak to a new caller called Tony. Good morning, I guess, over there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Good morning, Nigel. Britain made a great statement during and after the Salisbury murders that the Russians perpetrated, and it was that it just isn't worth it. We're watching Don't Do It in Britain, and that should be our reaction to this sad event in Turkey. If Saudis murder Saudis in Turkey, Britain is no longer the world's policeman. We should leave it to Donald Trump, who also isn't very comfortable with being the world's policeman, and we should get on with commerce. As far as Yemen is concerned, I spent 3 years in the Middle East, Nigel, and the only conclusion I can come to is it's better, if possible at all, to stay out of it. Yes. However, if we can, as is so often in the Middle East, choose the best of all evils, let's allow the Saudis to counterbalance the Iranians and keep the geopolitical situation in balance.
Isn't that the decision that Donald Trump took? Trump took the decision, as a regime, we'd rather be with the Saudis than be with the Iranians, because you can't be with both. So do you think Trump is handling this crisis well?
I don't think he quite knows what to do, and usually the president's style, because he's a businessman and not a politician, I think has been and will continue to be, unless you prove it. It's not a fact. The man is innocent until proven guilty, although everybody, including me, suspects he's completely guilty. But until it's a proven fact, there is no requirement for a response from the Americans. That's going to be Trump's.
It's the first time since the president that I've seen him hedging around a question. Normally he's very decisive on one side of the argument or another. But Tony, your one comment after your 3 years of living in the Middle East, that if at all possible, we should not pick sides and get involved. I couldn't agree with more. Thank you for the call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here at LBC. It's 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Jeremy Hunt's joined other G7 nation foreign ministers in condemning the killing of the dissident Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the strongest possible terms. It's been confirmed the Prime Minister will face the influential 1922 Committee of Conservative backbenchers tomorrow, following reports of plots to remove her from office. 2 people have been injured following a gas cylinder explosion at a factory in Glasgow this afternoon. LBC weather dry and clear tonight for southern and eastern parts. Cloudier with rain though further north, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler. On the trains, a reduced services running on South Western Railway because of strike action, with no service running to or from Hampton Court or between Teddington and Shepperton. On the tubes, there are severe delays on the Central Line eastbound between North Acton and West Ruislip. And onto the roads on the M4, there are delays westbound between Junction 2 for Brentford and Junction 3 for Heston. Because of a breakdown, a lane has been closed, and it's struggling on the A12 northbound between the Blackwall Tunnel and the Bow Interchange. That's because the lane is closed for recovery work after an accident earlier.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
At 8, broadcaster and columnist Yasmin Alibaya-Brown joins me to take your calls on political correctness. At 9, has your accent held you back? But first, the LBC News Hour.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Clear a house, clear an office, clear a little bit, or clear loads of it. With Clearabee, getting rid of rubbish is quick, easy and affordable. Choose our man and van rubbish removal service and we'll come and clear almost any rubbish from almost anywhere. Because whatever you want rid of, there's a Clearabee man in a Clearabee van who can do it professionally and legally. Book now at clearabee.co.uk.
Clear rubbish easily. Clearabee.
Sometimes you wish you could just magic things better. Like that time you tried to paint your walls a sparkly shade of unicorn. But you don't need to be a magician to fix things because Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable. So for decorators, plasterers or other professionals in their trade, just pop online, make your wish and they appear like magic.
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
Kids, the older they get, the trickier it can be to find the perfect gift. But by giving NS&I premium bonds, you can give them opportunity. With premium bonds, your child or grandchild can win tax-free prizes up to £1 million. And because we're backed by HM Treasury, every penny you invest stays 100% secure.
Wow!
So for a gift your little ones will appreciate even when they're not so little, give them premium bonds at nsandI.com. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
Indonesia has been struck by a devastating earthquake and tsunami. Hundreds of thousands of people need your help right now. Search DEC or text radio to 70000 to give £5.
Everyone's asking you if you've ever had PPI. And for a good reason. If you've had a mortgage, loan or credit card in the past, you could be owed thousands. The deadline for making a PPI claim has now been set. So now's the time to text LA Claims to see if you could be due a refund. We'll do a free, no obligation PPI check and let you know if you could be owed money. So don't be off your trolley. Get in touch with LA Claims now. Text WIN to 60012. That's WIN to 60012.
It's the month-end sale at Oak Furnitureland. So find great-looking furniture that's perfect for you, all in solid hardwood, and get a big saving too. It's delivered free and guaranteed to arrive in time for Christmas. So shop now at an Oak Furnitureland near you. End Sunday.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
And a new, slightly macabre twist to this Jamal Khashoggi story is Sky News are reporting that body parts have been found in the Saudi Consul General's garden, which is 500 yards down the road from the embassy. As yet, unconfirmed. You'd have thought if they wanted to hide body parts, that'd be about the last place they'd put them. No doubt more truth on that will emerge. Joe says, your mate Trump is full of praise for his very close friends, the Saudis. That's why they weren't on the list of banned nations. What does that say about your judgment of character? Well, Joe, there you go, matey. Trump made a big decision that the relationship with Saudi Arabia was the one that America wanted in the Middle East, and that Iran were the bad guys sponsoring terrorism in the region, and that Obama had got this completely and utterly wrong. And I have to say, I think picking goodies and baddies in that part of the world is very difficult. Jennifer is calling from Leeds, is a new caller to the show. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm so glad.
What should we do? You have, well done.
I've worked in Saudi Arabia. I worked in Saudi Arabia for 7 years. So
right.
All your suspicions that you have talked about, the behaviour, the recurrent incidents that happen, and then it's forgotten, it's swept under the carpet, and then we have another incident and so on. It's going to continue. Britain has to sever its relations with that country because they have one law for themselves. The arrogancy, the behaviour, it will continue. It will not stop until either the US or the UK puts its foot down. It's going to continue. When are people going to listen? What is it going to take? Maybe it will take this incident to change things. It may not be the right incident, but which one will be the right incident? What's happening in Yemen is an outrage, an absolute outrage, but nobody's taking any notice. Maybe
they weren't, Jennifer. They weren't, Jennifer. I wonder whether they're now taking a bit. I wonder whether people are now taking a bit of notice of what's happening in Yemen and getting interested in it as a result of this murder. Jennifer,
yes, possibly, but that could only be temporary. But I've been there 7 years, and I'm telling you, even with the driving, the reforms of the driving, yes, that was a good thing that happened, and obviously about time. But look what's happened to the women who instigated it. They're still in prison. It's not like it's freedom for all. It doesn't happen like that. That country is why it's brainwashing the rest of the world. Absolutely.
Why were you there, Jennifer?
Why.
Jennifer,
sorry?
Why were you there for 7 years?
I was working there, and I was living on a compound. So it's like a US sort of style compound. And, you're there and you hear things, but you're sort of like in this bubble. You live in this bubble because you do on a compound. You live in this bubble and you either shut your eyes, you try and ignore it, but it's there. And to be honest, you're fooling yourself that these other things are not going on. And then there must come a time when you say enough is enough. I mean, there's people who've been out there for much longer than me, 10, 15, 25, 20, 30 years, and they're still there, even though they know all these things are going on. But the root cause why people go is initially for the money. But then, really, for me, I just couldn't take it anymore. Could not take it anymore, the behaviour.
Jennifer, you've put a very passionate case there. Jennifer telling us she's lived there for 7 years. It's time we put our foot down, or they are simply not going to change. Ben says this argument that the Saudis would get the weapons elsewhere is morally bankrupt. If people don't care about where we sell them, then why don't we sell weapons to Iran, North Korea and Russia? The money over lives argument is flawed. I'm going to stay in Leeds, but talk to Tony this time, who's another new caller. Hi, Tony.
Hello, Nigel. Nigel, the situation is that although we've issued a joint statement with France and Germany, France and Germany supply very, very little amount of arms to the Saudis. America supplies over 50%, and I think we supply over 20%. Quite clearly, what will be happening behind the scenes is a damage limitation exercise. If Mr. Erdogan has the relevant evidence, why hasn't he presented it? Quite clearly, he's looking to have a bargaining chip. The only question that comes to mind here in all of this is an old one, and that is custodiet custodien.
Tony, no, that's a very interesting point you've made, but do you understand those people out there who look at the fact that British weapons are being used in this war in Yemen with horror?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So what would you do, Tony? We've got to do something, Tony, haven't we?
Well, what we've got to do is change the government's set of mind. Right.
Okay.
From looking at money.
Yeah. Well, that's going to take some doing. Tony, thank you. And I'm sure Tony's right in his own cynical way there. Benny says, Ali gave us food for thought. If the Crown Prince is challenging Wahhabi with reform, could this whole saga be an attempt to instigate a coup against him? I think that's a slightly complicated way round of doing it, but who knows? Charlie from Ashford is a new caller. Welcome, Charlie.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing all right. So, what's to be done?
Well, look, I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you look back in history, we were actually the ones who installed this sort of Saudi family many generations ago. I can't say I'm surprised at what I've seen in the news recently. I mean, they have a long history of doing things like this.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the bigger picture is that we need to stop the Saudi sort of meddling in our own domestic affairs, because it's pretty clear that that we're heavily reliant on their oil and their resources, and we need to stop the Saudi funding of mosques and extremist ideology. You know,
absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. Charlie, I agree with that. That is something absolutely that we should do. But in terms of, you know, the weapons, the arms trade, the number of British jobs, the amount of money that is dependent upon the relationship with Saudi Arabia, do you think we should make a financial sacrifice in order to teach them a lesson?
End of the day, I think the reason Trump sort of sided with the Saudis in that area of the world is purely because if you look at the Arabian Peninsula itself, I mean, it's an important place, especially for sort of the Islamic world. But I do feel they're the most progressive progressive family, progressive leadership in the region, and I think Trump sees that. He's not a stupid man.
Okay, I'm going to let you go, Charlie. I'm going to go to Croydon to speak to Salia, who I understand comes from Yemen and is a new caller.
Yes.
Good evening.
Yes, Nigel, yes, I am from Yemen. Essentially what Saudi is doing is a complete joke. I mean, they're saying the reason they're getting into Yemen is because of terrorists, but originally all the terrorists are from Saudi, even 9/11, the majority of them were Saudi, and they're funded by Saudi Arabia in a sense. In Yemen, we have Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, even Jews. A lot of people don't actually know that. If you go into Google now, you would see loads of Muslim Jews, Jews in Yemen. So essentially, this never happened. I mean, I have family who's Shia and family that's Muslim, Sunni, so we've never had any issues. So where is this terrorist just came out from that we've never heard from in Yemen? I mean, even in the media, I've never heard of a Yemeni terrorist that's actually gone out and blown something up. But I've heard of loads of Saudi ones. So essentially,
is it time that our government started talking a bit more openly about what's going on in Yemen? Because people just don't know.
They should absolutely speak about it. I mean, but the reason they don't is because of Saudi's got the wealth, they've got the money. But they should just take that money off of them. They're the same way they've actually gone to different places, parts of the world where they went into Nigeria and kind of took over.
Well, we could. No. We could freeze bank accounts. There's a lot we could do. Listen, thank you for that call. I've run a bit over. I'm back tomorrow at 6. Tonight at 10 o'clock.